Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Thirsty Thursday edition of The Rundown. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the left coast in California, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. But as you know, I do not do this program by myself.
No, I try to assist whenever I can. My name is Mike Piwowarski. I am coming to you from the East Coast. I am the co-host with the most from the East Coast. Here with you today, Craig. How are you doing today?
I am doing phenomenally, and I'm actually really excited because guess what? We have a special guest co-host with us today. Guess who it is?
I might not be the co-host with the most. I might be the third co-host down the coast.
Down the coast. Well, I think we've got you. I think we've got you. I think we've got you beat. I think those of us on the left coast, actually, there's more of us today than there are of you. That's because joining us today, Top Shot Season 4 champion, Mr. Chris Cheng. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me on the show. And yeah, the West Coast is definitely the best coast. I'm here in the Santa Cruz Mountains in the Bay Area. So sorry, Mike, we got you outnumbered.
That's
well,
right.
I think it all depends on what you're talking about.
I was going to say, between the two of you right now, what do you got, 10 rounds worth of ammo?
It's a good one. I love
it. Yeah, don't quit your day job.
Yeah. Oh, right. I'm in Florida. I got 10 rounds in the bottom of my cereal bowl right here.
So, Chris, we wanted to have you on the program today. Wanted to talk about, just kind of news of the day, but also I understand you have something really big coming up, something dealing with NFTs and an auction.
Yeah, so I'm really excited, to break this down really quickly. NFTs are this new form of digital collectible, and I'm partnering with Recoil Magazine to sell issue 56 of their recent cover, which I was on. The cover caused a kind of quite the stir and the controversy, partially around the LGBT American flag shirt that I was wearing. And for me, right, this piece of cover art, it provoked and evoked really important conversations around the Second Amendment. And the cover art stands for that the Second Amendment is for all. 2A for all was and is the sort of the slogan of the cover. So we're minting 10 NFT versions of the cover. We're auctioning it off starting October 19th at the website nft.recoilweb.com. It's a 5-day auction. There's lots of prizes. And also part of the proceeds will be going to 3 of my favorite Second Amendment organizations, the Firearms Policy Coalition, the Pink Pistols / Operation Blazing Sword. And the last is a new one for Asian Americans called the Asian Pacific American Gun Owners Association, or APA-GOA. So yeah, I'm here to talk about that NFT auction and also all the other news that's going on in the day here.
Excellent. Well, I think you bring up one of the things that's a really good point is, as conservatives, we happen to believe, we don't believe in, like, for example, the left believes a lot in, special rights for special people. Conservatives believe in all rights for all people. And I think sometimes because we may disagree with someone politically, some who will tend to be on our side on many issues will forget and be like, they'll have an issue. Well, I disagree with this person here, so therefore I disagree with them on everything. And I'm like, no, the rights are rights. They're rights because it doesn't matter really what you believe. It's what your political ideology is. The fact is we're all entitled to those rights as citizens of these United States.
Exactly, and the fact that I'm gay and that I'm Asian, right? These character traits should not matter with respect to civil rights, right? Whether we're talking about the Second Amendment or the First Amendment or any of our other civil rights, that rights are rights for all Americans from all backgrounds, and so that's what this cover art represents, right? It's a very simple concept, right? That the Second Amendment is for everyone. And I'm really proud to be partnering with Recoil and the Firearms Policy Coalition, the Pink Pistols, APA-GOA, and helping promote this new way, right? This NFT concept, buying and collecting and selling digital art. It's brand new. It's a pretty wild concept if you aren't familiar. But let me tell you that digital collectibles, it's just an extension of the analog version of collecting things. I collected baseball cards when I was growing up, and loved talking about all my favorite baseball players, right? The teams, right? The 1987 Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card, right, is like an iconic baseball card that any baseball card collector knows about, for example. And I see a very similar world happening for the firearms space and the gun community. And this NFT digital art, again, right, it's a way to provoke conversation, to form meaningful connections with each other, and not just have blithe talking points about the Second Amendment, but to really talk about, well, right, what is gun culture really about? How diverse? And I love to talk about the actual diversity that exists in the firearms community, and this digital art concept is a great way for us to expand the reach and the conversation about gun rights and gun culture. Now,
Mikey is into collecting. I don't know what else he collects, but I do know he collects bourbons. Do they have bourbon NFTs? The alcohol content's probably not as good.
Yeah, well, get the short answer is yeah. So there's distilleries that are selling NFT. Basically, it's like NFTs they're a digital sort of item. They can be a certificate. They can be a picture, a video. So distilleries are selling shares of a barrel in the form of an NFT, right? So the NFT is like your digital ticket or your digital like certificate of authenticity. And so when they crack open the barrel, your NFT holders are entitled to, a bottle or 2 bottles or whatever that certificate entitles you to. So absolutely, yeah, you can buy an NFT of bourbon, and it's crazy. It's a brand new world though, right? So this is an up and coming concept, but it's very cool. Lots of interesting and engaging applications across multiple industries.
Well, phenomenal. So there's a link to where you can go to get more information on the NFT auction in the description of this video. Just check it out. He's already said it, but just check it out here at the bottom in the description of this video, and you'll get a chance to check that out, learn more about NFTs, and specifically learn more about what you can possibly win in this particular auction.
Craig, before we move on, let me ask Chris. The cover, the original Recoil cover is just, I mean, it's a piece of work in itself. It stands wonderfully alone. But you say there's going to be 10 of the NFTs they're selling off. Are they going to be, changing the background on it? I mean, I'm going to assume it's still going to be you in the shirt there with the firearm making the point. But are they changing it any way differently from each one? Somehow a different theme or something.
They are serialized, right? So
Okay.
He has, serial number 1 through 10. So everyone's going to have a little unique digitally signed copy. Another change or enhancement for the NFT auction is that I've physically, autographed the digital copy as well. So you can see my actual signature on the digital cover. So yeah, these are some of the distinct components of the NFT auction versus the physical magazine cover.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool.
Very cool. So it's kind of like, I had a hard time understanding it until someone brought up the idea. Well, it's the same thing whether it's with, actual art or collectibles like cards. It's like really a lot of the value is in the authenticity of it and the fact that it's specifically numbered and whatnot. And I was like, okay, so if you are a collector into stuff like that, then it's probably it's an easier concept to understand and get your head around.
Exactly, and that's what I think we need to lean into most. Is this is a collector's hobby for people who appreciate art, right? Or if there's multiple versions like cards, right? Who want to collect them all, right? If you want to complete the collection, so yeah, this NFT art concept. Beretta is actually also gotten into NFT art. They have this wild 2-minute video about the Beretta family and the history of firearms and the Beretta patriarchy. It's wild, but I think we're going to see more forms of digital art, digital collectors cards, etc. Coming to the NFT space. And the website nft.recoilweb.com is the NFT auction site for the auction that I'm holding with Recoil. And, this is the first shot across the bow, for me and the gun community. So, I really encourage everyone to take a look at the website and see this groundbreaking, first ever of its kind NFT auction in the gun space.
Very nice, very nice. Looking forward to checking it out. With that, we're going to go ahead and start getting into today's news. Now, you guys know that when we talk a lot about the various different stuff, about a lot of these issues, and we know that unfortunately there seems to be this move out there to call anything that folks on the left disagree with, to refer to it as racist. Well, there's actually an organization. It's supposed to be a family relationship organization. There's a research group that is now claiming that a two-parent household is actually racist and is a holdover from white supremacy. I'm kind of speechless.
Before we get into this one, I just want to say that as the senior old fat white racist in the room, that I kind of like sharing my racism now with you guys. Normally I'm the one that gets picked to be the racist, but now that we're all racist, Craig and Chris, my question is, does that make me less racist or you guys more racist?
Well, thank you for sharing your racism. It's like fresh out of the oven. It smells great, looks great. Can't wait to take a bite. But yeah, right. This concept of, like you're saying, Craig, right? If you don't agree with something, then if you just slap the racist label on it and just distort the reality and the history, it's a way of really appropriating and shutting down, right, the conversation. Because we sort of live we live in this culture where, oh, okay, if you're a racist or you're a sexist or you're a homophobe, then you're wrong, right? And it's like then the conversation just shuts down, which is it's dishonest, it's intellectually lazy, and this isn't about, for me, it's not about shutting down conversation, right? It should be about provoking more conversation about the issue. But when you start calling things racist, it makes that meaningful conversation harder to have.
Well, it's funny you say that, because that's exactly what it is. It's about ending the conversation. I mean, classical liberals believe in the value of ideas, the marketplace of ideas, where you bring your ideas, I bring my ideas, we debate them, we discuss them, we compare them to the facts and the science on the ground, and we come to an understanding. We may not come to an agreement, but we at least come to an understanding about the perspective and where one comes from, and policy generally then comes from that. But the way in which they're doing is this is a very much I hate to use the popular term, but it's a Marxist tactic to shut down debate and discussion with which you disagree. And so when you call them racist, now all of a sudden they are therefore evil. Therefore, I don't really have to address anything that they've said, because fundamentally they're evil because they're racist.
Yeah, I mean, how much attention do you pay to people these days, though, when they start to tell you racist, or their retort to your counterpoint is that you're racist? I've gotten to the point, myself now, at least when I get into a serious conversation or a serious debate, and their answer is, "Well, you're a racist," that I don't even try anymore. I just stop, turn on my heel, and walk away. And they're not even worth correcting.
Right, and that's a huge problem, right? The fact that the conversation shuts down, and I get it, right? It's like I've been in a similar situation where you're just like, well, like I can't have a meaningful conversation or productive conversation with someone, and unfortunately, sometimes we just have to walk away. But right, what good does that do, right? Who does that benefit if two parties just literally can't engage and turn around, or one person has to turn around and leave? I mean, so I guess, Craig, like the concept of a two-parent family is racist, right? That's what this article is about, that it's somehow upholding tenets of white supremacy. It's audacious, right? That just the thought of it. And sort of like, I came from a two-parent household, right? My mom and my dad raised me. I think I came out just fine, and I don't think we're, white supremacists or promoting any tenets of white supremacy as an Asian American family.
Well, now, according to these individuals, according to these folks, because you're Asian, you're not really, you're not really a minority. I mean, you're a minority, but you're not a minority, because, you've gone opposed to a lot of the stereotypes. And this is all about, once again, this intersectionality and identifying victim status. And I'm a believer in this. I'm a believer in who I am. So, for example, being black is part of who I am, but it doesn't define who I am. And these folks want what you do to define everything. They want race to define everything. And it really gets us away from addressing some of the key issues that are impacting many different communities, because once again, we can now we're the oppressed, you're the oppressors. We're going to now take you down, and that's really all they really care about.
Yeah, and I don't subscribe, to that mentality, and but similar to you, Craig, right? It's like I'm Asian and I'm gay and I'm a gun owner, and these are key parts of who I am, but I don't singularly define myself by either my physical traits or my hobbies. Now, how do I define myself? I like to define myself by my character, by my morals, by my ideals, and by my accomplishments. And I think that's the way that my parents raised me. Right. And that's the way that I live my life. And, I guess I understand why people, identify solely, by their race, because, right, there is actually, right, there's a lot of culture and community that revolves around race. And so not to say that it's, singularly like wrong, right, to think, oh, well, I'm Asian and that's sort of who I am. I guess I'm just encouraging people to think beyond, right, just your race. It's the world is a very rich place, and to kind of boil your identity down to a physical trait. I feel like at a high level, it's like you might be missing a lot of fun things in life, right? If you're just surrounding yourself by people of your race. And it's everything from food and culture to, right, art and music. It's like, hey, the more diversity of friends and colleagues that we have of different backgrounds, the more fun and more interesting life is. And I can talk to Mike about bourbon on the East Coast and how it's delicious. And, it's just like fun things like that. And yeah, Mike's white. It's like, I don't care. That's great. He's white. So what?
Wait. Hold on. Stop. Mike is white? Why did no one tell me this?
He needs to come out as a white guy.
It's time for you to come out, Mike, as a white guy.
I wanted to be on the show, Craig, and I've just had my filters set odd, so you couldn't tell I was white. So here I am, East Coast racist Mike on the show. Here we are.
There you go. It's that Florida tan that had me fooled.
That's it, baby. That's it. Sitting out here in the heat all day long. But my skin and my hair are so nice from the humidity. It's wonderful.
So nice.
Well, what's funny is, and this kind of leads me into our next story, is when everything becomes about race, well, then all of a sudden we wind up with a warped perception of things, including the news. And we all know that the news media is very big at changing narratives. Last week, a week ago today, there was a mass casualty event, or there was a shooting that where a number of people were shot by an individual at a school. So this was at a school, meaning it was in a gun-free school zone. Multiple people were shot, and for a period of time there, the individual who was the suspected, and as it would turn out to be the actual shooter, was at large. So there was a manhunt that was out there, right? And you know what was interesting about this whole thing? The mainstream media didn't cover it. If it weren't for Fox News, who actually ran the story, was actually running the story live as it was going on, as they were in the middle of this manhunt, you wouldn't even know that such a shooting took place. Now, I'm going to throw this out there because it kind of fits the discussion that we were just having. Why do you think the mainstream media ignored it?
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. Right? I mean, there's one hypothesis that the mainstream media ignored this mass shooting because, right, the shooter's black, and they don't want to be come off as the network doesn't want to come off as racist, right, and making a particular race look bad. And right, this kind of censorship, like self-censorship, right, in the context of journalism and the news, I mean, I want my facts, and I don't care if it's an uncomfortable truth, but just give me the facts, right, and let the audience, right, make a determination, right, of what the story, is or should be about. But yeah, the fact that the whole mass shooting was just really kind of ignored. It's curious, right? When most mass shootings, yeah, definitely get at least a day's worth of airtime.
Yeah, Craig. It's interesting. You're just going along exactly what Chris said, agreeing there. It didn't meet their narrative, right? This was a known black person, known shooter. If you recall, the only bit of little coverage we got out of it last week was there was one blurb that said constitutional carry causes school shooting in Texas, because remember the law just passed there within the past 13, 14 days. So they were immediately trying to tie that into it. Well, I guess when they realized the rest of the narrative wasn't going to match up, this got buried right away. And this is just clearly not what the media wants us to see. What do we want? Facts. Just as Chris said, it's what we want, facts. Craig, it's what you and I tell people on here all the time. Seek the facts, find the truth, make your own decisions. But how can you do that when the media won't release the facts because it doesn't meet their agenda?
Well, exactly. So this was an individual who, by the way, wasn't white. He didn't use an AR-15. He was only 18. So in Texas, constitutional carry wouldn't have applied to him because he wasn't 21.
Right.
I mean, all of the things about their narrative, everything completely and utterly fell apart. And as it turns out, he was actually released on bond and was actually only at the time being charged with assault, which I don't know if they've upgraded the charges at all, but I'm like, what the... But I mean, this falls in line with, once again, with that narrative. You remember in the city of Chicago where there was a gun battle in the middle of the streets, right? They found 70 shell casings, and the district attorney there in Chicago decided, well, we're not going to prosecute anybody because they were considered mutual combatants. Yep. Now, if it had been a black person shooting, or a white person shooting at a black person, or an Asian person shooting at a black person, or a cop shooting at a black person, they would have them on civil rights charges. They would have them on attempted murder. I mean, these are guys that are firing indiscriminately in a public setting. Why are they not in jail? Well, it's because of the color of their skin. And I keep going back to what happened to people who are going to get engaged in a gun battle in the middle of the streets over gang activity. If I'm looking at the content of their character, I'm saying they probably need to be in jail.
Yeah, listen, remember there were deaths in that one. There was a murder involved in that case in Chicago, and it still went out as mutual combatants, mutual combat. I think we joked about it, Craig, where he said it's time to strap up Tombstone style and just go walk down the streets in Chicago. I mean, if I'm going to be challenged, isn't that mutual combat, right? It's time to test those skill sets. It's just ridiculous that Chicago would come up with that. And we saw that in New York also with the Carmine's restaurant. Mutual combat was what they were talking about. But how insane is this that, again, we cannot rely on the media whatsoever for facts.
Yeah, and also on top of that, the criminal justice system is right. They're letting race impact the way that they prosecute certain types of cases. And you're right. I mean, I come from a world where I think justice should be colorblind, right? That you shouldn't either be more or less harshly sentenced, right, because of your race. But I think what I see here in San Francisco, for example, is our district attorney seems to be more lenient on people of color. And it's like, hey, look, I mean, a criminal's a criminal, right? At the end of the day, like, doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. And if our DA is going to be, releasing criminals early just because they're a person of color, right, that erodes trust in the criminal justice system, right? As a resident of San Francisco, if I'm just seeing this revolving door of criminals, coming in and out of the justice system because our leaders are letting criminals out early for, not for any good reason, right? Not for good behavior if they're just being released because a district attorney feels like they're going to be racist if they keep them locked up. I mean, that's a problem. It's a huge problem.
Well, you know what? And it's leading to, and I'm gonna skip ahead one story. it's leading to this next story, which is what's happening. So Walgreens last year in San Francisco, there has been a major increase, spike in crime nationwide. But especially here in California, shoplifting has become and stealing has become a big thing because we actually passed a referendum that made it a misdemeanor to steal anything less than $950. That costs less than $950. And the thing is that it is literally making a huge, I mean, we're talking shoplifting has gone up dramatically. And so last year, Walgreens closed 17 stores in the San Francisco Bay Area. And this year, they're closing 5 more stores. Now, what they noticed was that in the stores in San Francisco in particular, that the shoplifting is the theft is 5 times more than any of their other stores. And in the stores in San Francisco, they've actually invested like 46 times more money in security in order to protect those stores, and yet still it is not making a difference. So now all of a sudden we're starting to actually see the consequences of basically just decriminalizing crime and letting criminals walk the street, because now in communities throughout San Francisco, they're losing access to much needed health care, because where are you going to go if you need a prescription or you need something? Where are you going to go if all of the CVS's and the Walgreens and the all wind up shuttering their doors?
The situation and conditions here in San Francisco have become quite deplorable, and the street conditions are deteriorating week over week. I live in a very nice neighborhood in San Francisco, but even in my neighborhood, I step outside to go grab a cup of coffee and I'm dodging, piles of human feces and, homeless people, who are, they're sleeping on the sidewalk, and there's open drug dealing and drug activity, drug users happening with families and their young children walking, to and from school. And what's happening in Walgreens, is no surprise to any San Francisco resident. But we're reaping what we sow here, right? Because in California we can vote on propositions and change the law. And California voters, I don't think, realized what this downstream implication was going to be with passing that particular proposition. And to see some of the footage of these brazen daytime shoplifters literally, just walking into a Walgreens, they're on video. I mean, you've seen cell phone footage of these criminals just literally taking their arm and just walking and just scraping product off the shelf into a garbage bag. And the security guard, they can't do anything, right? Like they can't touch the criminal. They can't pepper spray them. They can't detain them because they're afraid they're going to get sued, which is this crazy system that we have created here in the city of San Francisco, where even law enforcement, like they feel like they're literally got their hands cuffed behind their backs. And if they happen to arrest a criminal, that they're not even confident that the district attorney is going to press charges back to, hey, if the criminal is a person of color, well, their chances of getting released are greatly increased, which is it's just crazy, right? You can commit crimes all you want here in San Francisco and get away with it. And who at the end of the day suffers? It's innocent residents like me and the other 800 some thousand residents of San Francisco. It's just such a shame, but we're going to hit rock bottom at some point, and the momentum is going to turn here, right? Where we're going to come back to very simple principles and concepts of, if you are committing a crime, you're going to get arrested, you're going to get prosecuted, and if you're guilty, you're going to go to jail.
Yeah, listen, I've seen the same thing in New York. I haven't been out to San Francisco in quite some time, but under de Blasio there in New York City, the same thing's gone on. Chris, we've seen the pharmacy shut down because they've got the same kind of laws now. There's the shelves are empty. The mom and pops have been gone. De Blasio helped kill them with the COVID. Manhattan has responded by becoming the worst place for crime in New York State since the 70s. Back when it was ridiculous, you couldn't go out after dark in Manhattan, and it's that way again. And the city's responded by basically abandoning Manhattan. There might be 25% of the people moving around Manhattan that used to be there. It's all gone out to the rest of the boroughs. And Chris, I agree with you. We've got to get this back. We've got to wait for the pendulum to come back and help the pendulum and push it back. I just hope it's not a an escape from New York type scenario where, it becomes lawlessness before we get back to, the restoration of law.
Another dynamic here is one of the San Francisco supervisors had a very insightful comment where she said, we can't let Walgreens shut their stores down. All right. And that's coming from an elected city official. And it's like, wow, right. A comment like that gives us some pretty clear insight, right, into what her mentality and attitude is towards private businesses, right? That they're not a business, right? That they should be an arm of the government, right? That the government can direct businesses to stay open, even if they're getting, even if they're losing money because of shoplifting. Right? It's like, hey, look, like these are businesses, right? They're making business decisions. They don't want to shut down, right? They want to provide a service to the community, right? And provide prescription medication and all the conveniences that Walgreens provides. But if the city is failing at their job, which they are doing, they're failing spectacularly at providing a safe and secure environment and safe streets so businesses like Walgreens can succeed and thrive and provide a vital service to the community. But this supervisor, right? It's she's not taking ownership, right? She is shifting blame to Walgreens, right? She's not taking responsibility that, hey, supervisor, it is your responsibility, right, to support the San Francisco Police Department, right? And the district attorney, you need to be prosecuting criminals who get caught for shoplifting. Our city leadership is failing on so many levels. It's turning into a Escape from New York, like Mad Max kind of situation. Yeah. Where someday, the Batman of our, San Francisco is turning into a Gotham City, right? We're going to see a Batman, come up sometime, and I might be one of those people, kind of like rooting for the vigilante because, hey, if the politicians can't do anything, like, hey, here's some vigilante Batman that's actually like making something happen, but I don't want to get there either. So it's a sad situation here in San Francisco, and I hope it gets better soon.
You hit the nail on the head. They're not taking ownership because they don't want to admit that their policies are failing, and in some cases, I'll be honest. Once again, I keep going back to this whole theory. There are some people who want the entire system to fail. It's the reason why they are attacking our educational system. They're attacking media. They're attacking law enforcement. They're attacking the family. They're attacking the church. They're attacking the government. All of it's because they want it all to come down, because somehow they have this belief that out of the ashes will rise a phoenix. And what they don't understand about revolution is this: most revolutions don't result, at least not immediately, in a better form of government or in a better society. It almost eventually leads to despots, leads to dictators, and the powerful become the ones in control, not necessarily the righteous, shall we say. But yeah, San Francisco, and folks, if you don't live in San Francisco, you don't live in California, you're probably saying, well, God, I'm glad I don't live there. But keep in mind, they're trying to bring this to the entire United States. Understand, the Speaker of the House is from San Francisco. The Vice President of the United States is from San Francisco. A number of the leaders in the House are from various different parts of California. I mean, when I call it California, I'm not playing. I'm not joking. It really does start. It is really ramping up that direction. And the worst part is that there are a lot of really good people who mean well in the state of California who just don't get it. And until things implode here in California, the folks in the rest of the nation, be wary, because people are leaving California because they can't afford to live the American dream here. And they're coming to a city near you.
And they're exporting, right, their California politics and importing it into the states that they move into. So yeah, in my Second Amendment advocacy, I talk about this point all the time, right? It's like, hey, just because you don't live here in California doesn't mean that you're safe, right? If we look at Colorado, look at Virginia, even parts of Texas, hey, like, they're turning a little bit more blue and a little bit more liberal, and You've got these Californians who are moving to other states. Like I said, no one's safe here, right? If you keep your eye off the ball here, next thing you know, you're going to become, a little bit closer to that communist manifesto, ideology with your elected officials and the policies in your city and your state. Mm-hmm. So it's everyone here. Everyone looks to California oftentimes, right? To set, we are a trendsetter, right? And set an example in a lot of ways. Some of it good, some of it bad. But the point is, right? Hey, California, we're 58 million residents. We have a tremendous GDP and impact on the U.S. economy, and obviously culturally and politically, a lot of activity happens here that has implications for the rest of the country.
Exactly. Hey, folks. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next topic, and I don't know how many of you guys listen to the Joe Rogan podcast or watch him or his videos, but Joe Rogan is a comedian, MMA commentator, and hosts a podcast, probably the biggest podcast in the video and audio podcast in the country. If not the world. But he does really like these long form interviews with folks. And one of the people we had on the show recently was Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who's the lead medical correspondent for CNN. Now, Joe Rogan recently told the public he tested positive for COVID-19 and talked about a number of the different things that he took in order to help ease the symptoms. And one of the things he talked about was the fact that he took ivermectin and it was prescribed to him by his doctor. Well, the folks at CNN, specifically the folks on Morning Joe, Mika Brzezinski and Joe, I'll just call him Joe, but joked and basically said that he was taking horse dewormer. Right? They basically said that his taking of ivermectin was taking a horse dewormer. Well, that wasn't accurate because ivermectin is something that's prescribed by doctors for people in millions of cases. And this was in fact prescribed by his doctor. But Joe Rogan had Sanjay Gupta on his show and in essence forced him to admit that the folks on CNN were lying about the fact that he was taking a horse dewormer.
Just wow. Again, first off, Craig, I think you and I have talked about it a couple of times. I believe that comedians are going to be the relief from the wokeness that we have. They are going to be the ones that save us from this because it is their job to dance along the edge of what is acceptable in society, to get us to laugh, to get us to see our own faults. And I think, they're going to be the ones that bring us back. We talked about Dave Chappelle last week, and now you listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. He's funny on there, but he's not setting out, to do a comedy half-hour show. But it's his his core of taking it to the edge there that I think is going to help bring this back. But yeah, to watch Sanjay, Dr. Gupta there have to eat the crow that his news agency is serving up was a nice little piece of justice there and a nice piece of work on Joe's behalf.
Yeah, for me, ivermectin has been super politicized. It's you have medical, quote unquote professionals opining on ivermectin, and now I'm not a doctor. But from what I spoke to my doctor about, he's a personal friend of mine, and I was just asking him, hey, like, what is going on with all of this stuff that I hear about ivermectin in the news? And a few weeks ago, he told me, he goes, yeah, Chris is like, ivermectin has multiple applications and uses in the medical community, both for humans and as a veterinary, application. And he's like, I don't understand why the media, right, is demonizing ivermectin, whether it's in the context of COVID or not, right? It's for him, my doctor friend, he's like, look, like there's objective facts out there about ivermectin. So I think this kind of comes back to this concept of, the media, often has their agenda, right? And if a certain set of facts or story doesn't fit the pre-existing narrative that they want to push, then they're going to either bury the story, or they're going to, on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? They're going to reinforce the narrative, right? That they've set. So anytime ivermectin is mentioned, it's a horse dewormer, it's a thing that's not for humans. It's like, no, like that's just not true, right? There are applications, right, for humans. So it's just, I think it's really important for those of us who are consuming the news to understand, right, what is the potential agenda, right, for a particular outlet. And to be frank, like, right, most of the mainstream media outlets, hey, like just literally list all of them, like they're pretty biased.
Yeah.
And they can be pretty terrible in many ways. And, so when I'm consuming media, it's like, look, like I'm ingesting as much of this information as I can. Now the opinions, right, and the commentary overlay, right, that happens, like I'm listening to that too, but I'm listening with a skeptical ear, right? And I'm looking at it with a skeptical eye, and I'm trying my best to think critically, right, around, okay, well, I've got all these facts and opinions and commentary now. What do I think is actually going on, or at least understanding the impact that it may have on my perspective, and understanding what the media outlet might be trying to do. And as long as they're being objective and transparent around what they're trying to do, like I'll respect that. But right, if it's if a particular media outlet is trying to right, like kind of make everything racist or sexist without it actually being racist or sexist, right, then I discount, right, and kind of downgrade outlets or stories that kind of don't tell the truth in a very transparent, objective manner.
Yeah, I always say that Fox News used to be very good at separating their news from their opinion, and they've really kind of gotten away from that, and they do what a lot of the left-wing networks do now, in that their news reporting is mixed in with a lot of opinion. Now, I will say this: they at least make sure to bring people on from the other side, or people that may disagree with them. But at the very, but it's still kind of slanted. And when you understand the perspective, and you accept a perspective that they're coming from, it becomes easier to then dig through the information. And now, especially because a lot of these websites are trying to get into searchability, they're linking to a lot of their source material. So you don't even have to take their word for it. You can actually go to the source material and look at the data and the information yourself. And once again, come up with an objective opinion. I just like the fact that in this particular case, Joe Rogan just called them out for what they were. Now, you know that won't be on CNN. They won't be playing any of that on CNN, where Dr. Sanjay Gupta is made it to be, basically he has to defend CNN. But anyway, it's good to hear. And that actually kind of leads us into our parting shot. This was one that I saw, and I thought it was perfect for the whole Joe Rogan discussion. It says, if science was never questioned, you'd still be drinking cocaine, giving kids cough syrup with heroin, spraying people with DDT, and smoking the cigarette brand your doctor recommended.
Yeah, listen, Craig, if they still had DDT on the shelves down here in Florida, I'd probably still be using it, just to be clear. That's the only way to get rid of bugs here. But yeah, listen, that's science, right? What else do we have to see? Do we have to watch, the black sailors being given LSD to watch their tests? Do we have to set soldiers and airmen out by nuclear tests to watch them there because it's all safe? It was science, right? It was all done for science sake. Anytime somebody says it's science, to me, it says, okay, well, we're done. Let's get rid of everything looking at the expanding or looking at the future. We no longer want to move forward. Because isn't that what science is, right? Isn't that trying to understand and better ourselves?
Science is just what we know right now.
Correct.
And it's only based on what we know right now, what we have the ability to understand right now. And 10 years from now, that will be different. 50 years from now, it will be different.
Yeah, it makes me think about a story I saw the other day about aspirin, right? And apparently, aspirin is no longer good for you in terms of trying to prevent a heart attack. And it's like, think about eggs, right? At one point, eggs were terrible for you. Now eggs are great for you. And but I guess the point is, right? I mean, science is great. I mean, I'm a believer in science, but right, let's make sure that we're talking about the facts. And of course, hey, everyone can have some different interpretation of the facts, but and I guess when it comes to science, just because there's one or two studies, right, that show this or that, doesn't mean that makes it an absolute truth, right? Often a scientific study, it's a controlled experiment, right? That, hey, hypothetically, if you run this controlled experiment over and over and over again, now if you get the same results, right, over a long period of time, right, then you're bolstering the science, right, and the validity of whatever the outcome is. But I think what I'm tending to see these days is somebody cites one scientific study, and then it becomes this absolute truth that, we need to just treat this study like it's the Bible and can't be, that it's just the source of truth, and there's no questioning it. You can't poke or prod at it or doubt it. So just want to add that perspective as well.
That's because I
saw that the other day with the story Chris just said with the aspirin.
Yeah.
And it was the same reaction it was, here's a study where they say the aspirin now may not be the best thing for you. So but they laid it down. It was a singular study, laid it down as if it was law. And it's like, well, we've got to publish this because it's controversy now. It's different than what we know. So let's publish it and get that controversy out there. How about peer reviews? How about putting it in the hospitals? How about letting the medical staff look at it, as opposed to here's one story, and now we're gonna again, we want the controversy. Now, what's gonna happen to the one guy who watched that story and says, "Oh, I've got chest pains, but the new story said don't take the medicine, so I won't."
Well, it's
that irresponsible journalism right there is going to lead to deaths. It really is, for that specific aspirin story.
We saw it happen with hydroxychloroquine. The thing is that it used to be that when you investigated, logic and reasoning was about deductive reasoning. I take in all the facts and all of the information, I test hypotheses, and I come to a conclusion. Now, in many cases, it's because public policy and media perception is more important than the fact than arriving at the facts. I've decided on my policy. Now I'm only going to look at the facts and data that support that predetermined conclusion. That's called inductive reasoning. That is not scientific. It's politically scientific, but that's really about it. Anyway, folks, hey, we're actually coming up against it. We went a little long today, so before we get going, first, Mike, I want to give you an opportunity to give a shout out to our sponsors.
Let's say hey to our good friends at Grid Defense, and Guerrilla Manufacturing. Grid Defense and Guerrilla Manufacturing. And then let me hand it back to Chris. And Chris, tell us everywhere where everybody can follow you, watch the NFTs, and keep in touch with you at all times.
Yep. Yeah, I'm on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Medium as well. My handle is @TopShotChris. And for anybody that's interested in bidding in the October 19th NFT digital art auction, come check it out at nft.recoilweb.com.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you so much. It was a pleasure hanging out with y'all today and talking about the news and whatnot. Chris, we're going to have you back on again sometime soon.
Would love to be back on, and thanks again for having me.
All right, folks.
Thanks for stopping in, Chris.
That's going to be it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing, and encouraging your friends to do the same. We will see you tomorrow on Freed Back Friday.
Woohoo!